Hey guys, it's Bridget from OpenChair back with you today for another video. Today I want to talk all about counselors, therapists. What are they? What do they do? Is it gonna be weird? Is it different than talking to my mom or my dad or my best friend at school? Is there a bad time for me to go to counseling? Is there a good time for me to go to counseling? All those things we are going to cover today in this video. So I have my list of notes just to make sure that I don't forget anything I want to talk about, so forgive me if I'm like bobbing and weaving up and down a lot. So first off, I wanted to give a little quick framework about what kind of education counselors and therapists have. By the way, counselors and therapists are usually the same thing. We go by a lot of different names. So to be a counselor or a therapist, we have to get a master's or a doctorate level degree to be able to work with clients or patients, depending on the setting. We call them by different names, kind of like therapists and counselors called by different names, patients and clients called by different names. So to be able to work with patients and clients, we have to have a master's or a doctorate level, and that's just to make sure that we are educated and we are well equipped to give you the best mental health care possible. Otherwise, it might be a little unsafe. After we graduate from our master's or doctoral degree programs, we have to go through a certain number of training hours with someone who's fully licensed. So when we graduate, we're considered limited license until we've gotten all of our supervision hours, which depending on like the state that you're in or the program that you went through or the license that you're pursuing, those hours kind of vary, but they're usually like in the thousands. So we're getting lots of good training from someone who's fully licensed, who's been doing this a little bit longer than we have, to give us some good guidance and feedback to help us hone our skills and find like the things that we're great at and maybe notice some things that we're not so great at that we can improve on so that we can treat you better. In addition to supervision hours, we also have to take a national examination that covers everything that we studied in our master's and doctorate level program. So there are lots of questions, and you have to reach a certain score to prove that you're competent in all of those areas, so that, like I said before, we're giving you the best, safest care that we can for your mental health, because that's really important. So some of the classes that we take in our education programs cover things like assessment and testing. So if you've ever gone to like a counselor's or a therapist's office and they ask you like, hey, could you fill out this inventory for me? It might be like a depression inventory, and they might ask you to check all the boxes that apply, like it's hard for me to get out of bed in the morning. I'm feeling very close to tears throughout the day. I feel like helpless or hopeless, or I have low motivation, things like that. They might ask you to scale it too, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how bothered are you by these things? So we can see if your symptoms are improving, if we're going in the right direction for treatment, or if there are things that we need to adjust and modify. Other things we cover in school are individual, group, and family therapy. So depending on what the client needs, like if it's a one-on-one thing where they just want to work on themselves and they just kind of need to vent and work through some past issues, we can do that one-on-one. Or if it's like a family situation where we need to bring everyone who's involved in to the counseling setting so that we can start to examine maybe what are some of the behavior patterns or the emotional patterns that we keep getting stuck in that we need to fix, so that everyone in the family feels like they can come together and communicate and thrive. Or if it's like a group counseling situation where maybe we have a lot of people who are struggling with anxiety or a lot of people who are struggling with an eating disorder, how can we put together a really great group that has a focus and a goal, but that the people in the group are not just benefiting from the counselor who's running the group, but from the other people who are in the group with them, that they can get some feedback from, they can lean on, they can share some experiences with. I think it's a lot easier when you're going through something knowing that someone else is going through it too. You feel like, oh, okay, well, if this person can deal with it, then I can deal with it. Or, you know, they're struggling in an area and I want to give them some encouragement. You can kind of feed off of each other and help spur each other on towards growth and healing. We also talk a lot in school about like preventative mental health care, behavior modification, and guidance throughout the lifespan. So we know that most people are going to find themselves in some sort of mental health crisis at some point in their life. But if we can kind of take a couple steps before that to prevent this mental health crisis from being this huge thing, and we can kind of minimize the impact that it has on someone's life by equipping them early on in the process with a lot of support and skills and tools that they need, so that when they do hit that mental health crisis, it doesn't have to weigh them down for like years and years and years and really become this huge obstacle to them. It's something that's like, oh, that was just kind of a bump in the road. That was something that, I put things in place early on so that this wouldn't have to be a huge issue for me. We also talk a lot about diagnosis and treatment plans. So you might have heard things like bipolar or major depression. Those are some really big diagnoses that you might have heard of. So we talk a lot in school about what are all of those diagnoses, and there is a huge book of them that we are required to take a bunch of classes on so that we can learn exactly what those diagnoses mean, because they can carry a lot of weight. So we want to make sure that whatever we're giving someone as a diagnosis fits them very well, to make sure that we're not mislabeling things or calling something by a name we shouldn't be calling it, and that we can fit our treatment plan geared exactly towards those symptoms that person is experiencing that fit them into a particular diagnostic category. And that's another really great thing. As much as I love mental health videos on YouTube, I love watching them, I love making them, I love following mental health inspirational accounts on Instagram, all that stuff I'm a huge supporter of. Nothing beats individual counseling, and that's because you can make a treatment plan that's based specifically on your needs and your goals, where you want to go in life, with a counselor, so that we can take you from point A of like, I'm coming in with this issue that I just feel like I can't manage on my own, to point B of I'm living a life that I feel is happier and healthier and fits me and where I want to be and who I want to be, all that stuff. The line between point A and point B is the treatment plan. So that's something that you usually develop with your counselor to meet your specific goals, is keeping all of your specific symptoms in mind, and can be changed and modified depending on what you need during your counseling experience. Because, we might plan like, oh, we're going to teach all of these skills, and, in 6 months, they're going to have this much recovery. It might not always be the case. You might recover faster or be able to manage things faster, or it might take longer. Or those skills just might not be applicable, and we need to find other treatment avenues. You can modify that treatment plan with your counselor to make sure that both of you are on the same page about how you're going to get from point A to point B. And that's why I think that there's no substitute for individual counseling, because through like mental health videos or mental health accounts on Instagram, as much as I love them, they're not geared directly toward you specifically. They're geared towards a large audience with a lot of different health concerns. Another thing that we take a ton of time in school to learn about is theories and techniques. And the reason for that is that counselors or therapists need to have a wide variety of tools and skills that they can pull out at a moment's notice during a counseling session to meet the individual needs of whatever that client or that patient is coming in with that day. Like, one day we might be working on cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and that might be working wonders for that person. And then another day they come in and it's just not working as well. So we need to be able to really quickly have things at our disposal that we can pull out and share with our client to help get them through whatever rut they're in that day. And in addition to having those techniques, we want to know where those techniques came from. Like, what theories were they developed out of? Does that theory kind of fit our framework of how we view life, how we view development and psychology? Because everybody has a little bit different standpoint on how problems should be managed or how we should approach life. So we want to know, like, who developed these theories, who developed these techniques, where did they come from? Are they appropriate? Are they applicable? Are they culturally relevant, culturally sensitive? Are these things that we can and should be using? We want to know the back history of that to make sure that we're using the stuff that, that we feel really good about using. So I also wanted to quickly touch on, why should I go see a counselor? How could I benefit from that? Is it different than going to see someone at my church, or talking to someone at school, or asking my family member who might give you really great, really solid advice? And I'm not knocking that by any means. I think that sometimes it really is important to get advice and feedback from someone who's known you for a long time and they've seen you through a lot of different periods and seasons of life. But also as a counselor, we're coming at it from kind of like a third party standpoint where we're very unbiased because we're not emotionally entangled in whatever the situation is, because we don't go to your school or we don't live in the house. So we can see it from a more unbiased, objective standpoint. So is there ever a wrong time to go to counseling? In my opinion, I would say no. I would say it's really great to go to a counselor when you are struggling and you don't feel like you can do it by yourself and you're not getting the support or the tools that you need. That's a really great time to come to counseling. But I also think that even when things are going great, that's also a really good time to go to counseling. Because it's a lot easier to work on things when life is going like pretty smooth and steady, and we have more of an emotional bandwidth to deal with stuff. Because we've all got stuff, right? Like we're all coming in with past experiences, past wounds, really uncomfortable memories that we're lugging around with us. And when we're really in the thick of it, like when we're really depressed or we're really anxious or, we're really having a hard time adjusting to something in life, it can be really hard to work on things because you feel like life itself is so unmanageable. But when things are going really well, that might be a really great time to take on some of that extra work and start like kind of peeling back the layers. It's kind of like we're an onion. We're like peeling back the layers of what makes us us and getting to the root of some of those core issues so that even when life's going great, it can always get better, right? Like it can always improve. And even just to kind of track with a counselor and just kind of keep them up to date on things that you're working on or things that you're learning about yourself, or like letting them celebrate with you that things are going really awesome. I don't think there's ever a bad time to come to counseling. So I think I covered everything that I meant to in this video. If there's anything that you feel like I missed or I didn't go into enough detail about and you want more clarity on, feel free to drop it in a comment below so that I can make another video on it. I love talking about mental health counseling, and my passion is to make this really approachable so that people can enter into a counseling experience feeling very confident and comfortable that they know what they're getting into. So if there's any way that I can do that better or I can make things more clear, please let me know how I can help, because ultimately that's what I am aiming to do. I have loved hanging out with you today, guys. Thank you so much for taking your time to let me ramble about some counseling stuff and hopefully give you some good insight and some good information that you've been looking for. Until next time, bye guys.